Awesome. Good morning, everybody. So I just quickly want to introduce myself. So I am Kim Hance, and I am a social worker, not an attorney. We often, when we do these live presentations, a lot of folks are surprised that a law firm would employ a social worker. And one of the reasons is our firm specializes in both estate planning, elder law, long-term care planning, those types of services. And so while our attorneys are very well schooled in getting people qualified and doing the documents that are necessary to help folks sort of in the second half of their life, part of the things that I do is really kind of help navigate the services, understand what services are out there, help folks understand what they can be eligible for, and then navigate through that. Because it can be a bit of a challenge, as our little icon here indicates on the front slide. One of the things we talk about as we age is caregiving. And a lot of times we're in a caregiving role and don't even realize it. There are right now about 45 million people that are providing care to someone over the age of 18. So we're not counting childcare here. Over the age of 18. So that's a lot of people. And the majority of those folks are still working. So they're juggling their work schedule, their family schedule. And then when you look, about 80% of caregivers today are over the age of 50. So they are aging themselves and may need assistance as well. When we talk about the longevity of care, it can last for about 4.5 years on average. So that means some people are doing it for just a few years and some people are doing it for a much longer period of time. Caregiving is expensive. One of the things that we know is that if currently we were paying for every hour of those unpaid caregiver hours we were just talking about, it would be costing about $257 billion a year. It's a problem for employers because paying for different types of things when employees are out, if somebody has to take FMLA, it becomes a very expensive venture for everyone. On average, those people who are providing care, they spend about $6,800 out of pocket for care that they're providing to their loved ones. When we get a little more in detail about why the cost of caregiving is so much, we immediately go to worst case scenario. So in our area, a nursing home can cost anywhere from about $420 to $570 a day. So when we look at that for a monthly cost, that's anywhere between $12,000 and $17,000 a month. Not many folks that I know can pay that out of pocket. So we really do have to consider, the expenses of these things. Even going to an assisted living in our area, $3,000 to $8,000 a month. If we're looking at memory care specific, that can run up to $10,000 a month. So very, very expensive. We pull out home care here because most people, they don't want a nursing home and they don't want assisted living. They want to age right in place in their home. And home care, the average right now, hiring an agency can be about $30 an hour. Now, you might be lucky enough to find somebody that you can pay $12, $15 an hour, but under a 24-hour care scenario, still you're looking at the low end being about $13,000 a month for 24-hour care. Even starting out paying privately for care, even if you were getting about 4 hours a day. So 4 hours a day out of a 24-hour day is not a lot. So that's kind of our starting block. That even starts at about $3,500 a month. So you really have to talk about the considerations for finances when we're talking about long-term care. So what is long-term care? Most people, when you start talking about long-term care, they think it's nursing home. Let's back up a little bit. Long-term care can really start at the moment you might need somebody to do some grocery shopping for you. You might need somebody to remind you to do your medications. Long-term care planning really is how we want to live our lives as we age. It's one of the things that my husband and I are doing now. Most people would say, look at me and say, but you're still young. Well, yes, I'm young, but I did turn 50 a couple of years ago. So it gives you a little indication there of how old I am. But some of the things that we're considering and talking about aging and wanting to stay in our home, we have a small farmhouse, and guess where our bedrooms and bathroom are? Right upstairs. So as we age, our house is really not going to accommodate our needs. So one of the things that we're talking about now is doing an addition and making it a way that we can navigate and maneuver in our house. So it is one of the things that we kind of have to look at and talk about as we're doing the long-term care planning. Some of the questions that we talk about, folks, when we're talking about developing a good aging care plan is, where do you want to live? Is it that house that you've been in for the last 60 years? And if it is that house, what are the things that we have to do to make it safe, make it sustainable? Who's going to provide your care? Always ask this question in our live seminars, raise your hand if you think your kids are going to be the ones providing your care. And generally speaking, nobody raises their hand, and we all kind of chuckle. And it's not that our kids are bad. It's just that they've got their own lives. They don't live close anymore. We're in a situation where families are very, we're geographically separated. The other thing, of course, we have to think about is how we're going to pay for it. Based on the numbers that we just talked about, what are the financial resources that are available to help us provide for the care that you're going to need as you age. The next thing we start talking about is developing that actual care plan. And when I work with a family, I kind of start at a 50,000 foot view, if you will. So think about an airplane flying through the sky. One of the things that I want to understand is do you have a desire for social interaction? Most people say, oh, my mother never really, she doesn't really like to hang out with people. My dad was really isolated and was a loner. But you have to think about their life in general. Friends and family, that's social interaction. Are there friends and family close by? Is there a neighbor that they generally like to stand at the mailbox and chat with? I live in a very rural community, and the Stewarts in my community is a place where every morning around 7:30 or 8, there's a group of guys that meet every morning for coffee. Obviously not in this time, but that's something that they're developing in relationships that they have. Some of the places that we look at for social interaction, we're going to look at community groups and senior centers, what's close by, what's in the community. Educational programs. So there are lots of educational programs that folks can tap into. We have local community colleges that provide online classes. We have, right here in our own community of Saratoga, we have the Academy for Lifelong Learning that provides educational programs. School systems provide their BOCES or their learning classes at night. So there's lots of opportunities for different kinds of interactions. And then we can talk about also some type of community, whether it's an independent, an apartment complex. 55 plus communities now provide a lot of amenities that allow for folks to be able to access everything in one spot. We have one 55 plus community here in our area that has a swimming pool, they have a bocce court, they have a farmer's market once a week, they have all different kinds of activities and socials that are going on. And this is just a 55 plus, so a large majority of folks that live there are still working and still have careers. When we talk about a little more formal services, we're talking about home delivered meals. There are folks that are available to help with household management. That can be everything from bill paying, to doing the shopping, to keeping a calendar coordinated for folks. And then we have respite care and adult day programs. And I'm going to go into a little more detail about what some of those options are as we delve into all the resources that are available. So the next thing I'm going to look at when working with a family is what type of services is needed. So often a lot of our folks are getting to the point where maybe memory is starting to fail. So they may not need a lot of hands-on or physical assistance with our activities of daily living. So those are things like bathing, dressing, toileting, ambulating, and that's, walking from point A to point B, transferring, which is getting up from the chair, to the bathroom, getting up from bed and getting ready for the day, and eating. So those are our actual hands-on, task-based physical activities of daily living. And then we have all of the other things that come along with that. So those are we call the instrumental activities of daily living. And those are things like shopping, meal preparation, light housekeeping, laundry, managing the finances, medications, all of those things that kind of go along with keeping someone independent. So we're going to do a really extensive look at what type of assistance each person needs with that. Once I kind of have a full picture of what a person's personality style is like, and then what type of care is actually needed, that's when we're going to start talking about what services are most appropriate. When we start talking about the community-based services, one of the reasons we like to start with that first is because they really require the least amount of intrusion into the home. Think about home delivered meals. It's one of those services where somebody stops by, they're there for about 10 minutes, dropping off a meal, but that engagement is very important. One, somebody's getting a meal that they otherwise can't prepare for themselves. Second, there's an eyes-on visitor that is actually seeing that person, making sure that they're okay, and can report back that that person is doing well. So it's one of those things that really could help maintain a person's independence. Just having a simple, nutritious meal every day is super important for a lot of folks that otherwise can't cook for themselves. It's easier for someone to accept not having somebody come in their house for hours at a time. One of the things that we look at too is our neighborhoods that actually become an aging support system on their own. We have a professional word for that, and it's called a naturally occurring retirement community. There are lots of apartment complexes that folks are aging together. So some of these 55 plus communities that are coming up, people who are moving in now at 55, 60, they're all going to be aging together. So they become a natural retirement community as people grow into their 80s and beyond. There are more professional or more formal types of systems, and that's a village movement. And a village movement, we have one in Albany called Livingston Village. It's where people come together on a formal basis. It's kind of a membership, and you decide that on Saturdays, I'm able to go to the grocery store for somebody. So you kind of post it on a virtual billboard, email system, listserv, that type of thing. And if you've got other members who need somebody to go to the grocery store with them, you kind of pair up with one another. So it's a more formal system for setting up some volunteer type neighborhood supportive kind of services. When we move into accessing some of the community-based services, this is just a short list of some of the things that are available. We have everything from friendly home visiting. That's just somebody giving you a friendly call and asking how you're doing and if there's anything you need. Then we have much more significant services, things like adult day services, and that's where your person or yourself can go to a day program for the day. You can get your meals, you can have personal care done, you can have your medication administration. For someone who's aging and for a caregiver who's aging, it's a wonderful resource for folks to get that social engagement, to get the care that they need, and to give the caregiver a break. And generally speaking, the adult day services are a much more affordable option from an hourly standpoint than hiring somebody to come into your home to do the care. One of the things that I encourage all of my folks to do every single year is health insurance counseling. Every county office on aging provides what's called HICAP. So HICAP stands for Health Insurance Counseling Assistance Program. And it's one of those things where at 65, we're eligible for our Medicare, we sign up, we don't really think about it. Every year we have a renewal, and in most cases, people are just signing up for the same plan that they had. There are dozens of Medicare plans out there. And I encourage everybody every year during open enrollment to speak with somebody about the plan that you've chosen. The plan that you choose at 65 is certainly going to be a little bit different and the services it provides when you're 80 than it was when you were 65. Your copays may have changed. Your needs for services might have changed a little bit. Do you need a Medicare Advantage plan? Do you need a plan just that's straight Medicare? Do you need an insurance plan? So a HICAP counselor is that person that's going to sit down with you, and they're going to be able to review every single plan that is available. They're going to be able to look at the cost and balance out what your needs are versus what the plan offers. Right now, we're in a situation where if you end up in a hospital and you need a rehab stay, the 3-day hospitalization is being waived because of the coronavirus. But there are a lot of Medicare plans that will require you to have that 3-day hospitalization in order to access rehab services. There are some plans out there, however, that waive that need, even in times of not the coronavirus. So if that's something that you're concerned about, it's something to look at. It's good to ask questions. There are home maintenance services. So there's a wonderful program out of the Colony Senior Service Center called Umbrella. They service the Capital District, so all the way up to Saratoga. What's wonderful about Umbrella is they are vetted professionals that provide everything from transportation services to an electrician to a plumber to home maintenance. It's a membership, a sliding scale based on income. And I think the most per year is somewhere around $330 a year for the membership. And then you get this vetted professional for $12 to $15 an hour. So try to hire a good licensed electrician for $15 an hour, and you would be hiring somebody that I wouldn't trust to do my electrical service. One of the other things that really helps folks stay independent a much longer period of time would be something like a personal emergency response system. So we call them PERS for short. We like acronyms in long-term care. But they range from everything from your basic help, I've fallen and I can't get up button to a GPS system to a fall detector. Anyone who lives alone, I always recommend that they have a fall detector. What happens when you're going up and down the stairs to do your laundry, to do the different tasks of the day, you miss a step, you fall, you hit your head, and there's no one there to call 911. I also recommend it highly for someone who's taking care of an individual that may have a memory impairment. A lot of times our folks with memory impairments aren't able to use the telephone. And so if you're the primary caregiver for someone and you have a fall or you have some type of emergency, you may not be able to rely on that person to actually call for help for you. So suddenly we're then faced with not only one person, yourself, that's had the accident needing help, but possibly a person with memory impairment that may leave the house to look for help, become lost, and then we have a much more serious problem on our hands. We have a wonderful agency in the area called Northeastern Association for the Blind. So folks that have low vision or legally blind, NABA will come into the home and help set up the house to make it much more accessible. They do everything from large teleprompter screens to telephones that are easier to see and use, to helping folks be able to set up to pay their own bills. There's lots of different services that are available through the Northeastern Association for the Blind. We also are very rich in this community in caregiver education and support. We have programs like Catholic Charities, the Alzheimer's Association, there's the Eddie Alzheimer's Services. We're very, very lucky to really have a community that's very, very wealthy in community-based services. So one of the first things that generally folks need assistance with is transportation. It's one of those hard things that as we get older, driving becomes a little more challenging. And it's also one of the things that you know, we really equate to our independence. And if I give up my driving, I'm no longer going to be independent and able to access everything that I need. Again, we have a lot of options for transportation in our area. The County Office on Aging in any county has a very robust transportation program. The Capital District Transportation Association, they have a program called STAR. Most people don't know about STAR, but STAR is a bus that actually goes door to door. So it will come to your door, pick you up. It will go to the door of wherever you need to be, whether it's shopping, whether it's a doctor's appointment, physical therapy, those types of things. With STAR, you only have to fill out paperwork. Your physician needs to fill out that you're disabled, and generally speaking, anyone over the age of 65 that has some sort of need with an activity of daily living would qualify for the STAR transportation. It's a wonderful program. A caregiver can accompany you to your various appointments or needs. They're handicapped accessible, so it's wonderful if you've got somebody that you're caring for that needs a wheelchair, and a wheelchair can be very cumbersome to get in and out of a car, to get to and from even a handicap spot to the doctor's appointment or office. So the STAR transportation is a wonderful, wonderful program. Home care agencies. Typically, people don't think of home care agencies as providing transportation, but a companion agency that provides companion services, transportation is a big piece of what they offer. The nice thing about utilizing a home care agency for transportation is you have a one-on-one aide that is actually helping you in the home get ready, getting you in the car, you know, getting you to the doctor's appointment, getting the car parked, coming into the doctor's appointment with you, helping you navigate all that may need to be navigated. So for a lot of folks, having that one-on-one companion is very, very helpful in going to different various appointments. Senior centers in our area also provide transportation. So I know Colony Seniors have a very robust program. You'll see their buses all over Albany. The Saratoga Senior Center here in Saratoga provides transportation. There are lots of other senior centers that are a hub for connecting to different services. They may have volunteers that provide transportation, those different kinds of things. We also look at accessing things like cabs, Uber, and Lyft. Actually, in our area, there are a couple of Uber drivers that specialize in working with seniors and folks who have special needs. And maybe a cab driver is not the right person, but an Uber person, it will be very helpful in getting you to and from a destination. There's also transportation that's available through Medicaid. And we'll talk a little bit more about Medicaid as we get further on in, but it's a big part of the Medicaid program, and sometimes why we really encourage people to utilize that as a service. So let's talk a little bit more about what's available in home. So we have companion services, which I just touched on a little bit, and companion services really focus on a non-medical need. So non-medical means that you need standby assistance with transferring. You may need assistance with light housekeeping, laundry, meal preparation, reminders. That's a big part of what a companion will do. Companion services really is focused on non-hands-on care. So a companion really can't provide any kind of bathing assistance. They can't provide any kind of toileting assistance, those kinds of things. They're really great for reminders and standby assistance, which a large portion of our folks need. They generally don't need a medical person or a nurse to care for them. They just need somebody that can be there to be that standby safety person. Then we kind of get into more significant home care services. We can have a personal care aide. We can have a home health aide. They can provide hands-on care, so they can do hands-on bathing. They're actually getting the person to the shower, doing the actual hands-on bathing for that person, getting them out, drying them off, really helping prevent a fall from happening, those types of things. We can do homemaker services, which is really just focused on keeping the home intact. Private duty nursing is a big angle. Maybe we have somebody who has a significant wound that needs to be taken care of, somebody who may have a higher level of medication administration that really does require that skilled service of a nurse to provide. And then we have the home maintenance services that we talked a little bit about when we were talking about umbrella, somebody that can come in and provide all of those types of home care or home maintenance services that prevent us from having an accident and then requiring some long-term care. So when we're looking, as we see our community is really rich in these services, you know, where do we go to find these services? Obviously, you can call me, care manager, but then we also have services that we go through New York Connects. So New York Connects is a statewide program in New York. It can be accessed through any county that is available here. New York Connects is kind of the hub for everything that we've talked to up to this point. Home delivered meals, the transportation, understanding what's available out there for respite care, home care. The big piece that I talked about was the insurance information. Also food stamps, HEAP assistance, which is Home Energy Assistance Program. So all of those things are what New York Connects can connect you to. The next slide, I've given the area phone numbers for New York Connects. So if you live in any of these areas, these are the numbers that you can access for the New York Connects. When we talk about the services that we access specifically through New York Connects, we're going to talk about some of the different programs that we've already talked about. Big thing, assistance with benefits. Once you work with the New York Connects, you're going to get connected to things that you never really knew existed. So for example, I'm working with a client right now, and we started with home delivered meals. She's 95 years old. She was told by her physician that it was time for the nursing home. One of the first things we did was call our local county office on aging, had them come out, do an assessment. They've been able to set her up with a couple of hours of a home care person, 2 to 3 days a week, who comes in, helps do some of the light housekeeping, helps kind of oversee to make sure that she gets her shower, those types of things. But in addition to that, she's also gotten some assistance with her Medicare plan. So they saw that her Medicare plan wasn't the best option. So she's actually, her income is such that her Medicare premium is now being paid for through Medicare Savings Plan, which is saving her about $140 a month, which has been really wonderful. They also have somebody specifically to do some grocery shopping. She does get the home delivered meals. She's also getting a small amount of SNAP benefit, which is just what we know as food stamps. So she's getting about $50 a month for her for food stamps. So it's just a card she swipes when she goes and does her grocery shopping. So it's been a really wonderful support for her. So through this time when we're really not able to access a lot of care, she's getting a lot of support. Otherwise, it's helping keep her independent without a lot of intrusion. She was really not crazy about having a one-to-one aide in her home all of the time. So this has been a really great option, providing a lot of services to her. One of the other things that we're going to look at and access are faith-based services. So in our area, again, we have a very robust program through Catholic Charities where you can get some counseling, you can get respite for folks who may not have any type of memory problems, things like that. Jewish Family Services offers a lot of different kinds of supports, food pantry, education, They do a lot of home visiting, telephone reassurance calling. So always looking for those type of avenues that we can add to folks' care plan. There's an informal parish nurse program. So that is spread throughout the Capital District. And it's individual churches where a nurse, an RN, has actually taken on the role of working with congregational members to help them understand and access the appropriate medical services. The parish nurse may even make a home visit to make sure that somebody's got the right medications, that may help organize a pill box. Every parish nurse is a little different in the services they provide, but it's one of the things that we look at to see if you belong to a church, does your church have a parish nurse? So again, looking at the different types of community-based organizations that are out there, there are community health centers. So right here in Saratoga, we have the Saratoga Health Center, and they, in addition to providing primary care, they have mental health counseling, they have a dental clinic, they have a neurologist that comes in once a month, they have a nephrologist, they have a podiatrist that comes in. So a lot of services that somebody can access just by going to one place and not going to multiple destinations to get that care. Again, senior centers are an amazing community resource for us. I know that both senior centers, both in Albany and Saratoga, have increased 100-fold the services that they're providing to individuals now in the community. There are lots of nonprofit organizations that provide services. The Alzheimer's Association provides everything from one-on-one care consultations to families to help them coach through some of the behavioral issues that they may be dealing with if they have a loved one that has a memory impairment, to education programs. They have education programs from knowing the 10 signs of Alzheimer's and dementia to working with somebody that has behaviors, legal and financial education. They're all available free of charge online. They have a community resource finder. They have a billboard as a caregiver that you can link and connect with other caregivers in the across the United States. On the billboard, ask questions, have a chat, talk about what your issues are and finding support that way. Right here locally, the Eddie Alzheimer's Services has, in addition to doing care consultations and grants, they also have a respite program. And a respite program is where you have the option of a day, having your person go to a day program. You can choose to have the grant pay for a home care provider. So you have somebody come in a few times a week for a couple of hours each time. And that gives you, as the primary caregiver, an opportunity to get out and about and kind of participate in some of the things that you've been missing out on because you're providing that caregiving role. And then there's legal aid that also helps with different programs and different legal assistance in the event that somebody can't afford services otherwise. So let's talk a little bit about some of the funding sources that are available. And I actually think at this point, this is when Dave is going to take over and talk about.
Yeah, Kim, before I do, I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, we go through all these slides here, right? A lot of information, a lot of different programs, and many of them are, the title of this seminar is how not to pay for services. I'd say the majority of the programs, if not the vast majority of the programs we're talking about here, don't involve a cost to the consumer. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you mentioned yourself, right? Who could they contact? They can contact you. Now, I know that you cost money because you have to cost money, right? Now, you are a treasure trove of information. You could lead people to the right programs that you've talked about thus far. And then there's also a different part of your job where you're essentially a care manager that is being compensated, and you're dealing with maybe the interaction of some of these programs, but also some of the payment options we're going to talk about, like Medicaid. So I guess my question to you really isn't a question. It's just, can you go into, for a moment, your methodology and how you work with families. Someone says, hey, this all sounds great. We're not sure if we need full long-term care services at home and Medicaid, but we sure like some of these programs. That Kim girl sounds quite smart. Let's go call her. How do you do what you do?
Right. So I think back in the beginning, one of the things that I was explaining is I kind of start at a much bigger view. So I call it the 50,000-foot view, where I'm taking into consideration everything that's going on. And I try to start narrowing it down. And if you can think about a funnel, if you will, one of the first things that I talk to families about are having, a plan be safe and sustainable. And a lot of these services can keep somebody sustainable for a long period of time with minimal intrusion and at no cost. Because again, like you were mentioning, the majority of these programs that I've been talking about are at no or low cost. But they're also, in a lot of circumstances for folks, as the care needs start progressing, again, talking about sometimes care starts out incrementally. It starts out needing a little bit. And then as our needs grow, what are some things that we can keep adding to plan to help keep supplementing and keep sustaining that independent living? And a care manager, someone like myself, one of the things that I really pride myself on is really knowing all of these community services, what they provide, accessing them, because sometimes it's the navigating of the services that's really hard. It's knowing the right person to call. It's knowing, it's having that connection, and really having a care manager like myself or someone else in the community. That care manager really helps make those direct links and direct, bridges to folks to really help. Caregiving in itself is very challenging and overwhelming. The moment you sit down and try to start accessing some of these things, it becomes very confusing. The number of times that I've done a home visit and somebody says, I'll ask, do you have any services coming into the home? Oh, yes, I have a nurse. So I'll ask, well, what's the visiting nurse for? They don't really know what the visiting nurse is there for. A lot of times they don't know where the visiting nurse is coming from. So I have a little bit of research to do. So, I'll ask them, where's the folder that was left behind? Or do you have a name? And so I kind of start doing that research and digging a little bit to see exactly what kind of services they're getting and what it's for. And so that I can really help them bridge the gap then beyond what that visiting nurse may be there for, or if it's a short-term service. So that's why a care manager is a wonderful thing to have, because it really is that person that sends you point to point, we get you directly there as opposed to
right.
having to wait.
And just to, clarify, how I am. This isn't an infomercial for Kim Hance or Herzog Law Firm. This is an educational program, and the programs you've talked about, you don't need a Kim Hance for those, but you may need someone to help coordinate and point you in the right direction. That's kind of a different story. I got a couple more questions for you. I'm not letting you go. So you talk to a family. Let's just say it's an existing client of our firm, and some event has taken place, and now you're in the mix, and there's a long-term care situation. Can you just talk a little bit about how or when you think that the services they need will rise to the level where it's above benefiting from some of these programs? I mean, when I look through these slides, some of these programs are fantastic, but they're surely not a truly long-term thing, because our client may not be able to depend on these programs forever, right? At some point, they're going to need some services provided on a daily basis that they can count on for hours and hours a day. So as you're doing that review, right, and you're thinking, okay, there are these programs that are free that they really can benefit from, what kind of triggers in your mind them starting to need more robust services? And then, we kind of get into the funding sources for those other services.
I would say, generally speaking, at the point that someone is, again, we go back to that safety and sustainable. Those are the two big marks that I look for in working with folks. You know, if a person can't be safe in their home for more than a couple of hours without having somebody there, that's when we're going to look to that next level of care. Sustainable, both financial and different community programs. So, for example, with like the Eddie Alzheimer's services, they have an amazing caregiver respite program, but it's limited. So it's not a program that's designed to carry somebody through, you know, all day, every day for 365 days. It's really designed for short term, you know, giving the caregiver a break and allowing, you know, that sort of service to come in. There aren't many services that are long-term sustainable as far as year-round. So through the county, you might be able to access that homemaker or that person that does the grocery shopping. But when needs start growing above the ability to have somebody come in and do a little light housekeeping, and you really require somebody to be there every day, that's when we're going to look at what the other options are. And in most circumstances, people can't afford to pay, even at 4 hours a day, like we talked about earlier. 4 hours a day is not a lot of care. It's not a lot of time out of a 24-hour day. So even at 4 hours a day, you're looking at spending about $3,500 a month just on that 4 hours a day. A lot of folks can't sustain that for a long period of time. So that's when we're going to start looking at some of the other formal funding options that are out there that will help us sustain a much longer term plan for somebody to be able to stay at home.
Absolutely right. And you know, the catch-22 of it, Kim, is when they do need those couple hours a day and it's an extra, you know, $300, $400, $500 a week perhaps, just for those several hours a day. You multiply that times 4 weeks, and then you take into account, it's not like they're, you know, they're going to just get a second job to pay for it. We're on a fixed budget. We're in retirement. Right. We already have things to pay for. And now there's this new thing in life called long-term care. So, I mean, those programs, every time you talk, I learn something. And a lot of those programs could be so helpful. And if you think about it, it's not going to change the course of, you know, your trajectory. Everyone's going to get older every day. And your needs, I don't want to depress anyone, right? But eventually your needs get to the point where you're going to need some assistance. And it seems like those options, those programs where you don't have to spend money on them can help lengthen that process so that when you do need a good amount of care, you've gotten through a look back period, if there's a look back period involved, which we'll talk about. You know, I keep thinking about everything that our society's been doing the last 2 months. And it's not to keep people from getting sick, it's from keeping it from getting out of control. And a lot of these programs seems like it could keep your escalation of long-term care needs, kind of slow it down a little bit, because we don't have to go from 0 to nursing home, 0 to assisted living. There's a lot of programs out there that can help. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some funding sources. So this kind of goes against the whole title of the seminar, because the seminar is how not to pay for services, and now we're saying, well, other than county office of the aging or some veterans benefits that you're going to qualify for, how exactly can we get through this without spending money? And as you'll see, sometimes, especially in a crisis plan, we're going to have to spend money to get to the point where we're not spending money, or we're spending far less, and that's when we get involved with things like Medicaid. Also, you know, we can't do contractually at Herzog cannot do a seminar without talking about trust, because they're so intertwined with everything we do. And it's a great way to pre-plan, spend some money now, so down the road you have a lot of programs at your fingertips. So I'm talking about Medicaid without spending on a monthly basis or going through some sort of crisis. And I'm just going to switch my video so I don't have Kim's blocked out video. Excuse me for a moment. No, I don't know how to do that. That's all right. So how are we going to pay for this stuff? Well, obviously we could pay out of pocket. It's called private paying. It's not too complicated. You're going to take whatever is in that wallet of yours and bank account of yours, and you're going to spend it for whatever needs you happen to have. And it may start with a little bit of needs. Someone to help out, you give them 40 bucks cash every week because every now and then they're checking in on you, so on and so forth. It could obviously get quite expensive when we start talking about nursing homes, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 a month. Assisted livings can get quite pricey, especially when we're talking about memory care units within the assisted living. Again, that could be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 with memory care. Assisted livings can start as little as $3,000 a month, however. Long-term care insurance is a wonderful option, and certainly if you have long-term care insurance, you're going to use it at some point. Otherwise, you've been wasting all those premiums you've been paying. We're finding more and more that less clients have long-term care insurance, and certainly those clients of ours who are, entering the second half of their lives, they have it even less, maybe because there are less options when it comes to long-term care insurance. Maybe they feel they're priced out of it, or they do the math and see, well, I might live a really, really long time, and if I do, well, that's a lot of premiums. I got to tell you though, my parents have long-term care insurance. I feel I have credibility talking about it because they have it. Their son is a elder law attorney, right? Who I could have done a trust for them at some point. And they decided to go the long-term care insurance route. And I got to tell you, I'm thrilled they did, because first of all, they're spending not their money, not mine, so they can do whatever they want with their money. But I know that if they have a severe long-term care need, they're going to have a lot of different options when it comes to how to pay for it. There's obviously perceived downsides to long-term care insurance, and this isn't to talk about the pros and cons, other than to really make sure you know it's an option. And as you are looking in the future, how could I plan this out? That's certainly a tire you want to kick along the way. There's veteran services, sometimes it's called a veteran's pension, aid in attendance, and a couple things about that. First of all, if you're able to get it, that's fantastic. What ends up happening is that when we go through the VA, sometimes things take a long time, okay? That shouldn't be too shocking. Another thing is that the veteran aid and attendance benefits now come with a look-back period, so there is some level of pre-planning you're going to need to do, okay? And then people see Medicare and Medicaid, and that's usually when people start to think about ways to pay, real ways to pay for their care. And that's where some of the misinformation starts as well, okay? So Medicare, right? I know that many of you have had some sort of scenario where a family member, neighbor, friend, their mom, some sort of fact pattern where somebody fell, they were elderly, they went to the hospital, there was maybe some surgery, maybe they dodged a bullet, but they're off their feet for a week because they're at the hospital, and they go to rehab after the hospital to get stronger, to get better. And then where do they go from there? They go home. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, I hear you talking about these trusts, I hear you talking about Medicaid and lookbacks. My girlfriend's mom, right, my neighbor, went to the hospital, went to rehab, went home, Medicare covered it all. Yes, that can happen. It absolutely can happen. It does happen. I don't want you to depend on that as the way to pay for long-term care. As Kim mentioned earlier, long-term care, right? You can't say long-term care without long-term, right? We are looking months and months. We're looking years and years. And with the Medicare program, because Medicare is health insurance, Medicare can provide short-term, long-term care. Absolutely, they can help with your rehab. You know why? Because when you're doing rehab, you're getting better. And the whole point of health insurance is to help you get better, okay? Now, there are some prerequisites. You need to be in a hospital, admitted for at least 3 days. Admitted is the key. If you're there and it's observation or it's not 3 days of admitted status, Medicare will do nothing for your recuperation, or they have the option of doing nothing rather. So we are admitted, 3 days, next stop, rehab, Medicare, yes, they will cover up to the first 20 days Why do I say up to? Well, I say up to because at any point you can perhaps refuse rehab services. You can get better and you don't really need rehab anymore. You could actually plateau in your recovery. Sure, you could get stronger perhaps, but it's really not going to get you better. And Medicare could say, oh, we're out. Go talk to Medicaid. Go pay for your long-term care some other way. Now, on the slide, you see days 21 through 100, right? Another 80 days potentially, up to another 80 days of help from Medicare. That's great. Now, for those next 80 days, there is a copay of $176 a day. If you multiply that times 30 days in a month, you get to some number that's over $5,100. So, hooray, Medicare, but that's a lot of money every month to be paying. While that's as good as it gets, because remember, at some point you plateau, you refuse services, Medicare says, I'm looking at these charts, you're not getting any better. That's it. Guess what? You now have a bad hip. And that's the reality going forward. Okay. So we don't want you to depend on Medicare. It certainly is an option, as we say in most of our seminars when we do talk about this specific kind of scenario. A little bit of information can go a long way. You have a loved one, goes to the hospital, ask, have they been admitted, right? It matters down the road if there's some sort of rehab event. By far, the largest way that people are paying for their long-term care expenses in this country is through a program called Medicaid. Shares 6 letters with Medicare. It serves to confuse the heck out of people because they think, well, I turned 65, I'm on Medicaid, right? No, you turn 65 and you can be on Medicare, the health insurance. Medicaid, at least this portion of Medicaid, is for long-term care expenses. And it can cover nursing homes, it can cover home care, adult daycare services, and in some specific scenarios, okay, it can cover assisted living services. Now, that goes against mostly everything that you know when it comes to Medicaid and assisted living, right? They don't cover assisted living. There are some facilities called ALPS where they do provide services, they do provide payment, and the rules are based off of the home care Medicaid program. Okay. Now, we do a lot of these seminars. We're almost an hour into this seminar, and I have a bunch of slides to go through, and they really focus on Medicaid. They focus on how to qualify so that your services thereafter are as free as possible, subject to whatever spend downs may apply. Also talks about trust that can help you set up that scenario ahead of time, so essentially we're able to save more money and get it to the point where you're not paying for your services as soon as possible, right, to limit the damage. And if I was going to teach you these things, I'd say, hey, let's spend an hour just on Medicaid, right? Let's not squeeze it in 10 minutes. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to squeeze it into 10 minutes. And these slides are going to be available to everybody. The actual recording will be available on our website. But more importantly, other recordings we've done specifically about Medicaid, specifically about community Medicaid, which is care at home, or chronic care Medicaid, which is care in a nursing home. We have seminars that talk all about that. And I'm going to encourage you guys to go to those seminars, and you could do so by obviously looking at our seminar schedule on our website, www.herzoglaw.com. And there's a seminar tab. There's also a blog tab. And if you click on that blog tab, you'll see that we do have video blog entries. And lo and behold, they are actual full versions of our seminars with slides and with our, our video in there. And it's a tremendous resource. You could access that as many times as you want. You could share it. And we highly encourage you guys to do that. This seminar was not supposed to be for you to learn about every detail about Medicaid, and unfortunately it is very detail oriented. Nonetheless though, I'm going to give it a go here, okay? If it's going a little fast, if it's, oh well, I missed that, I apologize. Do access absolutely free, 100% free resources we have on our website, including videos of every seminar that we do, okay? So here we go. So the main kind of Medicaid that we're doing these days, right, is community Medicaid, and I mean by volume, right? There are nursing home situations, and we do help last second, we do help planning well in advance. But in the last couple of years, we're seeing far more of our clients, and we're happy to see this, okay? It's less work for us, and they're in their happy place, their home. We see more people trying to qualify for community Medicaid. They want to get those services at home. All those different things that Kim talked about, that's just the tip of the iceberg. They want hours and hours of assistance at home so they could still garden when it's spring, right? They could still cook in their own kitchen. These things are important to them. This program becomes incredibly important. Now, in general, the community Medicaid program is for care at home, right? But home is not home. Home is not assisted living, not nursing home, essentially. So it could be the home that you've spent 40 years in. It could be an apartment you spent 1 month in. It could be your daughter's house that you're staying in a room, okay, and helping out. And really, they're helping you out. It could really be any of those places. And because it could be any of those places, we got to fill in lots of details, right? Within the community Medicaid program, there's so many different programs. You know, if Kim was here to talk about it, she talked enough, by the way. But if she wanted to talk, you know, another 30, 40, 50 minutes, and she does during our Aging in Place seminar that I highly encourage you to look at, she would go into the different versions of programs within community Medicaid, okay? If your needs are task-based, if we have, for example, problems going from point A to point B, we can't really shower on our own because if we fall, that's going to be a really big to-do, right? Cooking, cleaning, we're having specific issues with specific tasks. Well, the community Medicaid program can allow you to a person of your wishes, right? There's a program called Consumer Direct where you can have your own caretakers, right? You can be in charge of the care. You become a company essentially, and you have an agent that can help you organize the amount of hours of care you need. And they can help with those tasks. And by and large, that program doesn't provide a ton of hours, right? We're not seeing 24/7 care in that kind of program because how many tasks do you need? How many times do you have to shower every day? How many times do you have to go to the bathroom, right? How many times do you have to eat? Get from point A to point B. So that's a good starting point, though, okay? There are managed long-term care providers, companies out there that can provide long-term care, right, for task-based services. There are also these waiver programs, and this is where it gets pretty heavy, but there are waiver programs for especially people where there's brain injuries, where there's dementia diagnosis, some sort of cognitive impairment. And there, it's not a task-based thing, right? It's oversight. Dad forgot he took his medicine. He's taking it again, and then he's going to take it again an hour later because he forgot he took it an hour ago, right? We're worried about someone walking out the door on a nice day, and then they forget where they live and they keep walking, right? We're worried about the fact that mom forgot that the stove was left on, and for the third time in a week, a fire department had to be called, right? That person needs some oversight, and by and large, Kim's able to get a lot more hours for that individual because their need is technically everlasting, right? It's in continuum. Now, to qualify for community Medicaid, and this, you know, we've been yelling this from the mountaintops for about 4 weeks here. Community Medicaid has a reputation of being very easy to qualify for, and that is still true, and that will remain true until October 1st of this year. The reason why it's been so easy is that as we talk about what it means to qualify, what financially it means, it used to be, it continues to be for a number of months here, that you don't need to pre-plan for this program. You don't need to call me 5 years ago to set up some trust to protect assets you put in the trust. So that way, if you need home care, you qualify. You literally need to move things around today, tomorrow, this week, next week, the next week after, and you will qualify financially on June 1st of this year, right? 2.5 weeks from now. That ends on October 1st. As of October 1st, there will be a 30-month look back period in order for you to qualify for the program. That means that there will be an element of pre-planning that will have been needed in most cases, okay? Big change. Now, what does it mean to qualify? Well, here are some figures for the asset and income levels that an individual or a couple may have. And as you'll see, you can't have a lot of income if you're an individual. You can't have a lot of assets if you're an individual. Now, these words matter, and fortunately for us, there's rules on income where we could save the income you have above $895 a month. And as I mentioned, because there is no look-back period currently, and at least until October 1st for now, we know that we can move things around very quickly to get you qualified. But it is important to know what assets they care about and what assets would be exempt. When we talk about exempt assets, the house, number one, numero uno, that's a big one. Now, this provides you a false sense of security. It's true if you're getting home care, your home is a place you can get care, and it should be exempt, because if it's not exempt, well, then how can you get home care? It is exempt. It is something that Medicaid can put a lien on down the road after you've passed away. So there is some planning we want to do just to avoid that lien. But more importantly, as we mentioned with Kim, the plan is to keep getting older. That's the plan. If we stop getting older, then we have a different problem, and our relatives will deal with it. But the plan is to keep getting older. And as we get older, it is foreseeable. It's even probable that if I'm getting home care because of long-term care needs at home, that care may elevate to the point where home doesn't do it anymore. You get to that point, now we're looking at places like nursing homes where there's a 5-year look-back period. So I never want to be in a situation where we have a client getting home care and that home is still in their name, because if it turns out they need more services down the road, they need a nursing home, that home very quickly will turn into a non-exempt asset. It'll become a resource that'll prevent you from qualifying, because guess what? Your house is worth more than $15,750. So we like to plan when it comes to property. It also helps us avoid probate. Burial plots, irrevocable prepaid burial contracts, those are all exempt ways to use money. They're technically considered assets. Before you say, oh, well, then I'll just plan a $100,000 funeral and not use all that money, doesn't exactly work that way. Life insurance cash value is considered a resource, except for the first $1,500. You're allowed one car. It could be a car of any value. I had a client down in Kingston who had a $1.5 million with an million dollar car, and we never had to use that as his one exempt automobile, but you better believe I was going to use it, and I was going to have a fun time doing that. Retirement accounts, most importantly. Okay, let's be serious. Most important here, your retirement, your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, your pension. Exempt, 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 exempt as an asset. It does not count against you. If your retirement has $1 million in it, none of that million counts against the $15,750. Okay. However, retirement distributions, and they will make you take your distributions, your required minimum distribution, perhaps an amount that's above it. Maybe you're forced to take that income even before you get to age 72, which is when you normally will take your required minimum distribution. That money will be income. Okay, income, and it will be subject to the income rules. Very good. So income's the thing that we're going to need to talk about. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Now, when we want you to qualify, and this is where Medicaid then is taking care of all your long-term care needs based on a certain amount of hours they assess you for, and Medicaid's paying it, and it's free, right? It involves us getting you asset eligible, getting you below that threshold, $15,750, before we're applying. And after October 1st, it's 2.5 years before we're applying. Now, there's always things we could do last second, but that's really the rules now. Also involves us dealing with income, because the rules for income, right, most people have Social Security by itself that's above the $895. So when it comes to income, there's a spend down that they're going to want you to do. And I even have a tool for that. It's called a pooled supplemental needs trust or a pooled income trust. It's a way for us to keep all your income for you. Because the reality of long-term care, reality of staying at home, is you still have to put food on the table. You still pay for the taxes and the insurance. It snows, well, someone's got to shovel that snow. You got to pay for your yard. You got to pay for National Grid. If the hot water heater breaks in your home, it's not like being in a nursing home where the nursing home takes care of everything. That's on you, right? And most people are barely able to live off the income they have in retirement. If we start having to spend every dollar down, give it to Medicaid, pay for our caregivers, and are left with $8.95, that's not a formula that works, okay? So we are able to preserve income through something called a pooled income trust. Again, far more detail, far more information if you do one of our other webinars that focus on the Medicaid program, the Aging in Place seminar in particular. In addition, guys, and the last slide talks about consultations. Come on in. Well, in meaning give us a call, right? A video conference, what have you. We can go, you could use our expertise. It's a free consultation. We could assess exactly what your exposure is, give you an idea of what it would cost to fix it, all the different options you have. It's a tremendous way to get, I mean, these are great. Webinars are great. Your facts are too important to just rely on a webinar, and you'll probably do it eventually. So that's another great way to get your ducks in a row. Now, as I mentioned, there's no look back period. There will be October 1st. As of right now, that's the deadline. So for those of you who said, well, I need some services and I'd like to not pay for them, and that's why I'm in this seminar to begin with, my relative has a need. Well, if there's a long-term care need, if you're thinking I want that need taken care of at home, wherever home is, you're going to have an incentive to get that going before the October 1st deadline. Get our applications in so we're on the rules where there was no look back period. It didn't matter how we qualified. Okay, that's kind of really important. Now, the main vehicle we like to use to hold money to get it out of your name is going to be a Medicaid trust. And I'm going to kind of speed through this because the way I talk, it's going to be a 45-minute discussion. But the idea is that we know what Medicaid looks at. They look at those things that you can touch by yourself, like your bank account. And what we do with the Medicaid trust is we make it so that you can't touch it by yourself, okay? We're gonna make it so that you need someone else, someone you control to get your own money out. But theoretically, right, it's in this trust and it's protected from Medicaid. You actually could give money, especially with community Medicaid, you could just give money to your kids if you wanted to. We happen to think that's the worst idea in the world. I'm somebody's kid, right? I could benefit from not feeling that way. The reason why it's the worst thing in the world is because for now, there's no look back period. If at some point a year from now, 4 years from now, you end up having a long-term care need that finds you in a nursing home, there's hell to pay for those transfers we did back in May of 2020 to our kids. Who knows how they spent that money? I'd rather have it under lock and key in your trust, which only you can access with a little bit of help, and you still control everything. Again, a lot more on Medicaid trusts in other seminars. I'm not doing it a service by speeding through it, okay? Again, some basics on the trust. I'm going to go to the next slide because I think it's important though. If you do a trust and we're planning ahead of time, if we're doing a trust last second, I know what we're putting in. We're putting in everything we have to get you qualified next month, okay? If the goal is to plan in advance, all right, I don't need any of that, but I definitely don't want to lose a lot of money and I want to leave a lot of money to my kids or grandkids or these great causes. The trust sounds good. The question is always, well, what do we put in it? I think the more important question is, what do you keep out of it, right? Because you have a life to live. It's not all doom and gloom. I don't know what's going to happen in life, okay? But your home is a great starter. Let's put that in the trust. Large assets, brokerage accounts, let's put that in the trust. Well, I live off that income. That's great. You'll continue to live off that income. You'll be the income beneficiary of your trust. You still get that stuff. The idea is saving things while still being able to access them and control them big picture, okay? In terms of what we leave out, money in the bank, right? You could, based on the rules, if I just scroll back here for a moment, We could have an individual who's got a spouse and they could have $90,000 of resources between them. So there's a large amount of money we can leave outside the trust if we want to. I did mention the income protections. That's through something called a pooled supplemental needs trust. For now, all I want you to focus on is that we take your extra money every month, we put it into a specialized trust. It's not like that Medicaid trust, pooled supplemental needs trust, okay? And that money sits there until your representative says, hey, pool trust, here's the national grid bill, go pay this. Here's my tax bill, go pay this. And as long as it's in the name of the applicant, it's in the name of mom, dad, whatever, that bill, the pool trust will pay for it. And that could be rent. We have clients who are paying rent to their kids. Is it because the kids are greedy and want rent from their mom? Heck no. It's because we're able to preserve money and help pay for other expenses of that household, perhaps, without losing money to Medicaid. Again, what the pool trust pays for, really anything in the name of the applicant. It could be utilities, it could be grocery bills, it could be mom's credit card. Well, mom doesn't have a credit card. Guess what? Now mom has a credit card, and now we can pay her credit card bill with her pool trust, as long as we're not being tricky and using that for your expenses. Most importantly, and again, I apologize for having sped through some of these really important, I mean, hour-long discussions, but we're past the hour mark, and I want you to focus on exactly what Kim had presented on, right? Those services that you don't even need to get to this point. Now, I still want you to have a healthcare proxy, power of attorney, a will. Most cases, just about all cases, I want at least thought involved as to whether or not a trust makes sense. Because number one, I'm a glass half empty person in the office. I mean, right now, at home, I'd say this thing right here is full because that's all the coffee I need. At work, everything is glass half empty. And I want you to plan for the long term because I want you to be around for the long term. And here's the deal, if you continue to be around for the long term, there are going to be these needs eventually. So let's just plan for it, okay? Basics, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. That power of attorney is so important because if it's done the right way, if it's got the right powers for your agent will be able to move heaven and earth last second to at least make lemonade out of lemons if you did no pre-planning, or if you didn't plan ahead of time enough, or if bad things happen really quickly, that power of attorney can save us, okay? I did mention we do consults. They're free, whether it's with Kim about some care services or myself about some trust services or Medicaid applications, whatever's needed. I highly recommend you take advantage of those free consults. At some point, right, our services may cost money. You'll know that ahead of time. We'll still want you to encourage you on taking advantage of all those other things that Kim talked about as you go. But we do want you to avoid probate, all things being equal. We do want you to prepare for long-term care expenses, all things being equal. We're on the radio every weekend, Saturdays, and then a replay on Sunday. On Saturdays, it's Magic 590 AM, 100.5 FM, 96.9 FM, and 1410 AM in the North Country. And then it's replayed Sunday on WBPM in the Kingston area. That's 92.9 FM. I do have a couple comments. Hopefully they're not nasty ones. Let's see what they are. Oh, please do offer an entire webinar on Community Medicaid. We do. It's called Aging in Place. In fact, I believe you could access it right now at herzoglaw.com. You go to the blog tab, and one of those will be about it. You'll see some repetition, and that's all right. This is some heavy stuff, and we tend to repeat ourselves because, well, you kind of need to absorb it all. I hope you guys got a lot out of this seminar. I encourage you to join in the 2 o'clock or the 6 o'clock seminar. At 2 o'clock, we're talking about what checklist, what documents you should have in your estate planning checklist, in particular when we're dealing with things like a pandemic. There are some absolute must-haves, and many of them are not expensive at all. Some of them don't even have any cost associated with them. They're documents you can get online. Some of them are pretty beefy, and you do need the expertise involved in them. At 6 p.m., we're going to be talking about what happens when a loved one dies. No one likes to talk about it, right? the fact is, the more we know about what to expect when those events happen, the easier those events will be when it comes to the logistics and the legalities. More importantly, the more we know about how things can go screwy down the road, the better we will be at planning. Highly encourage you guys to go to that seminar. We don't do it very often. What happens when a loved one dies? Sometimes people say to us, I'm the executor for my father, and we say, sorry for your loss. And they say, well, dad's still alive. Well, then you're not executor yet. And a lot of people don't understand what any of those terms mean. Great, great seminar, 6 p.m. today. Okay, we do have more webinars next week. I know one will be on Medicare versus Medicaid and kind of do a deep dive on that. Highly encourage you guys to attend. I do have another chat here. That was great. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Catherine, thank you. All right, guys, take care.